I'm Amber Mitchell, 27 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I was in a loving relationship with Ryan. After 3 years together, something changed. His warm smile became cold dismissals, his sweet words turned to bitter insults. When I questioned him about a text from someone named Katie, he exploded, saying he had the right to go anywhere and do anything. But when I suggested I deserved the same freedom, his reaction revealed everything I needed to know about who he truly was. Before I dive into this painful but ultimately empowering story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever dealt with double standards in a relationship, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Ryan entered my life like a breath of fresh air at my friend Mark's housewarming party 3 years ago. I'd been single for almost a year after ending a relationship that had fizzled into comfortable boredom. As a graphic designer at a busy marketing agency, I spent most of my days juggling client deadlines and creative brainstorming sessions. My social life had become an afterthought. That night, I almost didn't go to the party. My deadline for the Henderson account loomed, but my coworker Taylor insisted I needed a break. The moment I walked through Mark's door, Ryan caught my eye. He wasn't just physically attractive with his tall frame and warm brown eyes, he carried himself with a quiet confidence that drew me in. "You look like you could use this," he said, handing me a glass of wine after noticing me standing awkwardly by myself. His smile reached his eyes, creating tiny crinkles in the corners. We discovered we both loved obscure indie films, hiking on weekends, and had the same bizarre fondness for pineapple on pizza, a controversial opinion we jokingly defended together against Mark's theatrical disgust. Our first 6 months together were wonderful. Ryan sent thoughtful text messages throughout my workday. He remembered small details about my life and brought me my favorite coffee when picking me up. He respected my career and seemed genuinely interested when I talked about my projects. When I landed the McAllister campaign, he organized a surprise celebration dinner. "I've never met anyone who gets me like you do," he told me one night as we walked along the riverfront, hand in hand. "It's like you've known me forever." After a year together, moving in seemed like the natural next step. We found a 2-bedroom apartment with a small balcony overlooking a park. I turned the second bedroom into a home office where I could work on freelance projects. Ryan, who worked in financial consulting, converted part of the living room into his workspace. We established comfortable routines, cooking together on weeknights, trying new restaurants on Fridays, and lazy Sunday mornings with coffee and pastries from the bakery down the street. Looking back, there were warning signs I chose to ignore. Like when Ryan checked my phone while I was in the shower, claiming he was just looking for that restaurant we talked about. Or how he'd question me about male colleagues who commented on my social media posts. But these moments were so scattered among the good times that I dismissed them as minor insecurities. My best friend Jessica noticed before I did. During a rare girls' lunch 6 months after Ryan and I moved in together, she carefully broached the subject. "Has Ryan always been so particular about your schedule?" she asked, stirring her iced tea. "What do you mean?" I remember feeling immediately defensive. "Last week when we were supposed to meet for coffee and you said you had to check with him first. And remember Tyler's birthday party? Ryan seemed upset when that guy from Tyler's work was talking to you about design stuff." I brushed off her concerns. "He just likes being included in plans. And that guy at the party was clearly flirting." Jessica didn't push, but her expression told me she wasn't convinced. "My parents met Ryan during their visit for Thanksgiving that first year we lived together. My dad, always reserved with my boyfriends, warmed up to Ryan's knowledge of baseball statistics and investment strategies. My mom pulled me aside before they left. 'He's charming, honey. Just make sure he appreciates how special you are.' Ryan's family was a different story. His father remained a distant figure who called occasionally from his new life in Arizona with his second wife. His mother, Patricia, was overprotective and subtly competitive with me for Ryan's attention. During our visits to her house, she'd remind Ryan of inside jokes I wasn't part of or mention how his ex-girlfriend Emma always made the most wonderful chocolate chip cookies. Despite these undercurrents, I believed we had built a solid foundation. We talked about the future, maybe moving to a bigger place in a couple of years, the possibility of marriage. I felt secure, valued, and loved. I had no idea that the relationship I treasured was about to undergo a transformation I wouldn't recognize until it was almost too late. The shift in Ryan's behavior was so gradual that pinpointing exactly when it began is nearly impossible. Like watching the minute hand on a clock, you don't see it move until you look away and back again. But looking back, I can see that things started changing around our 2-year anniversary. Ryan received a promotion at his financial consulting firm, moving from analyst to senior consultant. The new position came with a considerable salary increase, more responsibility, and a new social circle of higher-ranking colleagues. I was genuinely happy for him. He'd worked hard and deserved the recognition. We should celebrate, I suggested, planning a surprise dinner at his favorite steakhouse. Maybe next weekend, he replied, checking his watch. The team is going out for drinks tonight. Client networking thing. These client networking things quickly became a regular occurrence. Twice-weekly happy hours extended into late nights. When I asked about joining sometime, Ryan's response was immediate. It's not really your scene, Amber. Just a bunch of finance people talking shop. I understood the importance of workplace relationships and tried to be supportive. I'd have dinner waiting when he came home, asking about his day and listening to stories about colleagues I'd never met. But after a few months, the pattern became concerning. You're going out again? I asked one Thursday night as he changed into a button-down shirt I hadn't seen before. It's important for my career, Amber. Jackson might bring the Westfield account manager. That's what you said last Thursday. And Tuesday. He sighed dramatically. Do we have to do this every time? Not everyone has the luxury of working with creative types who don't care about professionalism. The comment stung, implying my career was somehow less legitimate than his. It was the first of many subtle digs that would become more frequent. As Ryan's nights out increased, so did his scrutiny of my activities. He began checking my phone regularly, scrolling through my texts and emails. Just being cautious, he'd say when I questioned him. My buddy Greg's girlfriend was texting her ex behind his back. Yet when I glanced at Ryan's phone one evening while he was in the shower, he emerged just as I picked it up and nearly snatched it from my hands. What the hell, Amber? That's a total invasion of privacy. The double standard became more pronounced as weeks passed. Ryan started commenting on my clothing choices when we went out together. Are you really wearing that? He asked one evening as I put on a dress I'd worn dozens of times before. It's kind of revealing, don't you think? His social media monitoring intensified too. If a male colleague or client liked my Instagram posts, Ryan would casually inquire about who they were and what my relationship was with them. Who's this Mike guy commenting on your work photos? He's the creative director at Thompson Media. I told you about the freelance project I did for them. You never mentioned he was hitting on you. He's not hitting on me. He wrote, nice work on the campaign. Ryan would scoff. I know how guys think, Amber. Trust me. To avoid these confrontations, I gradually began pulling back from social interactions. I posted less on Instagram. I turned down after-work drinks with my team. I made excuses to Jessica about why I couldn't meet for our regular coffee dates. It seemed easier to avoid situations that might trigger Ryan's suspicion than to deal with the tension afterward. After I missed her birthday dinner, Jessica showed up at our apartment unannounced one afternoon when Ryan was at work. Okay, what's going on? She demanded, refusing my offer of coffee. I haven't seen you in weeks. You barely respond to texts anymore. Work's been crazy, I offered weakly. The Donovan project has me swamped. Jessica crossed her arms. Amber, I've known you since college. You don't miss birthdays because of work. And you don't ignore your friends unless something's wrong. I tried maintaining the facade, but under Jessica's concerned gaze, I felt my composure cracking. Ryan thinks I should focus more on our relationship, I finally admitted. He gets upset when I make plans without checking with him first. And you're okay with that? Jessica's expression showed clear alarm. It's not as bad as it sounds. He's under a lot of pressure at work, and he wants us to spend time together when he's free. Jessica looked around our apartment, noting the changes that had slowly accumulated, photos of my friends that were no longer displayed, my art supplies tucked away in a closet rather than on my desk, the stack of novels I'd been meaning to read gathering dust on a shelf. When was the last time you painted? She asked quietly, knowing how much my personal art projects had always meant to me. I couldn't remember, and that realization hit me harder than I expected. Before leaving, Jessica hugged me tightly. Just remember who you are, Amber. And call me anytime, day or night. After she left, I stood in our living room, seeing our shared space through Jessica's eyes. When had I started reorganizing my life around Ryan's preferences? When had I started asking permission rather than simply informing him of my plans? The questions unsettled me, but I pushed them aside. Relationships required compromise, I reasoned. This was just a rough patch we'd work through. I had no idea that the breaking point was just days away. The day everything fell apart started ordinarily enough. It was a Saturday morning, and Ryan had been out late the night before at what he described as a work thing that might run long. He hadn't returned until after 2 a.m., crawling into bed smelling of alcohol and expensive cologne that I didn't recognize. I woke before him and made coffee, scrolling through Instagram while he slept off whatever had happened at his work thing. His phone, left on the kitchen counter, buzzed with an incoming text. I wouldn't normally look, but after months of double standards regarding privacy, something in me snapped. I glanced at the notification. Katie, last night was amazing. When can I see you again? My stomach dropped. I stood frozen, coffee mug halfway to my lips, as the screen went dark. I tapped it again, reading the message a second time to make sure I hadn't imagined it. I set my mug down carefully, my hand suddenly unsteady. Taking a deep breath, I picked up Ryan's phone and swiped to open it. It was locked, of course. I tried his usual code, my birthday, but it didn't work. He'd changed it. Ryan shuffled into the kitchen at that moment, hair disheveled and eyes puffy from sleep or hangover or both. He immediately noticed his phone in my hand. "What are you doing?" His voice was sharp despite his grogginess. "Who's Katie?" I asked directly, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. His expression shifted from surprise to anger in an instant. "You're checking my messages now?" I saw the notification when it came in. "Last night was amazing." "Care to explain?" Ryan snatched the phone from my hand. "She's a colleague. We were all out for drinks. Until 2 a.m.? And she's texting you personally about how amazing it was? Jesus, Amber, do you hear yourself? You sound pathetic and controlling." His voice rose as he backed away, checking his phone as if I might have broken into it. "I sound pathetic? For months you've been interrogating me about every male name in my contact list. You literally went through my emails last week." "That's different," he snapped. "How is it different, Ryan? Please explain how it's okay for you to monitor everything I do while I'm supposed to just trust you implicitly." His face darkened. "Because I'm not the one who spends all day around guys who want to sleep with me." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. "Are you serious right now? I work with professionals who respect me for my talent." "Oh, grow up, Amber. Men don't care about your talent. They care about getting you into bed." Each word felt like a slap. I stepped back, bumping against the kitchen counter. "So what exactly are you saying? That I can't be trusted around men, but you can do whatever you want with women like Katie?" "I'm saying I have the right to go anywhere and do anything without getting the third degree from you." He was shouting now, veins standing out on his neck. "I work hard to pay most of the bills around here, or haven't you noticed?" That was another low blow. While he did make more than me since his promotion, I contributed my fair share to our expenses. I always had. Fine, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. Then I have the same right. I'll go wherever I want, with whoever I want, and you don't get to question me about it. Ryan's reaction was immediate and frightening. His face contorted with rage as he stepped toward me, towering over my 5'5" frame with his 6'1" height. That is not the same thing, he roared, slamming his hand down on the counter beside me. I flinched. You don't get to turn this around on me. I tried to move away, but he blocked my path, not touching me but making it clear I couldn't leave. So there's one set of rules for you and another for me? I asked, my voice finally betraying my fear. You're twisting everything as usual, he said through clenched teeth. Then he turned abruptly and punched the wall next to the refrigerator, leaving a small dent in the drywall. I jumped, my heart pounding. Taking advantage of the space he'd created, I slipped past him and retreated to our bedroom, locking the door behind me. I leaned against it, listening to him cursing in the kitchen, then the sound of keys being grabbed and the apartment door slamming shut. I slid down to the floor, hugging my knees to my chest, shaking with adrenaline and fear. This wasn't just jealousy or insecurity anymore. The look in his eyes had been something else entirely, a possessive rage that made me feel like property rather than a partner. Hours passed. I eventually moved from the floor to the bed, checking my phone periodically. No messages from Ryan. No calls. Part of me was relieved, another part worried about where he was and what he was doing. Or who he was with. As evening approached, I texted Jessica, "Can we talk tomorrow?" Her response was immediate, "Everything okay?" I hesitated before replying, "Not really. But I'm safe. We'll call in the morning." I didn't sleep that night. Ryan never came home. As I stared at the ceiling, replaying the argument and all the months leading up to it, I began to see our relationship in a harsh new light. The control that had increased so gradually I hardly noticed it. The double standards I'd accepted to keep the peace. The parts of myself I'd slowly tucked away to avoid his disapproval. By morning, I felt both empty and strangely clear-headed. Something fundamental had broken between us, and I wasn't sure it could, or should, be repaired. Ryan didn't contact me all day Sunday. No calls, no texts, no explanation of where he'd spent the night. I moved through the apartment like a ghost, alternating between numbness and waves of anxiety. Jessica called twice, but I let it go to voicemail, not yet ready to put the morning's events into words. By evening, my emotional exhaustion gave way to a different feeling, determination. If Ryan wouldn't be honest with me, perhaps I could find answers myself. The name Katie kept echoing in my mind. I opened Instagram on my laptop rather than my phone, remembering that Ryan often checked my search history. With slight hesitation, I typed Katie into the search bar along with the name of Ryan's company. Several profiles appeared, but one immediately caught my attention, Katie_Lawson 28, whose profile picture showed a smiling blonde woman about my age. Her profile was public. I scrolled through her recent posts, my heart pounding harder with each swipe. There it was, from the previous night, a photo of a crowded bar I didn't recognize. The caption read, "Friday vibes with the finance crew." Ryan wasn't in the picture, but I recognized several of his colleagues in the background. I kept scrolling. 3 weeks earlier, another post, a close-up of cocktails at a rooftop bar Ryan had mentioned going to for a team-building event. The caption, "Sunset drinks with my favorite people." This time, the edge of Ryan's watch was visible in the frame. Then came the post that made my blood run cold. Dated 2 months ago, a check-in at Carmelo's, an expensive Italian restaurant downtown. The photo showed a partially eaten tiramisu with 2 forks. The caption, "Best dinner date spot in the city." I remembered that night clearly. Ryan had told me he was having dinner with a potential client and his wife. He'd even brought me leftover tiramisu, claiming the client had insisted they order dessert but no one had room to finish it. My hands trembling, I switched to Ryan's Instagram, which he rarely used. Nothing suspicious there. Then I tried Facebook, where I noticed several recent posts had a recurring username in the likes and comments, Catherine Lawson. In one photo from a company event 3 months ago, I could see her in the background, standing close to Ryan, laughing at something he was saying. I was still staring at that image when I heard keys in the door. I closed the laptop quickly as Ryan walked in, looking tired and unshaven. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "At Jason's." His colleague who lived across town. I needed space to think. I nodded, not believing him but not ready to reveal what I'd discovered. "About yesterday," he began, setting his keys down and approaching cautiously. I was out of line. "The wall thing, that wasn't okay. I was hungover and you caught me off guard with the accusations." "They weren't accusations, Ryan. I asked about a text I saw." He sighed heavily. "Katie is a new team member. We were all out together as a group. She was probably just being friendly." I studied his face, the slight twitch near his eye, the way he wouldn't hold my gaze for more than a second. After 3 years together, I knew his tells. "Are you seeing her?" I asked bluntly. "What? No. God, Amber, is that what you think of me?" His indignation seemed practiced rather than genuine. "This jealousy thing is getting out of hand." "Interesting that you'd call it jealousy," I said, opening my laptop again. "When you do it to me, it's protection or just being cautious." I turned the screen toward him, showing Katie's Instagram profile. "But when I have actual evidence, it's me being jealous." The color drained from his face. "You've been stalking my colleagues online? That's a new low. Is Carmelo's where you take all your clients and their wives?" I asked, ignoring his attempt to shift blame. "Because that's what you told me you were doing that night in July. But Katie seems to think it was a date." "You're taking social media posts out of context," he said, but his confidence was clearly shaken. "People exaggerate online all the time." I scrolled to another photo, Katie at a concert 8 weeks ago, the same concert Ryan had told me he was attending with the guys from work. The context seems pretty clear to me. My voice finally broke, the hurt pushing through my determined facade. "How long, Ryan?" He ran his hands through his hair, pacing the living room. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been lying to me for months while making me feel crazy for even having male friends." After several moments of tense silence, Ryan's shoulders slumped. "It's just physical," he finally admitted. "It doesn't mean anything." The words hit me like a physical blow. All the air seemed to leave my lungs at once. 3 months, maybe," he continued, apparently taking my silence as a cue to explain. "It started at the Thompson client party. She's in the investment division, we got talking, one thing led to another." I raised my hand to stop him. 3 months, I repeated. "While you were checking my phone, criticizing my clothes, making me feel guilty for going to lunch with my friends. 3 months of lying to my face." "I never meant to hurt you," he said, the words so cliché I almost laughed. "But you meant to control me," I replied, sudden clarity washing over me. "You projected your own behavior onto me. You assumed I must be cheating because that's what you were doing." "That's not fair," he protested weakly. "Neither is having one set of rules for you and another for me," I said, echoing our argument from the previous day. "You said you had the right to go anywhere and do anything. I guess now I know exactly what you meant by that." Ryan moved toward me, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. "We can work through this," he insisted. "Couples therapy, maybe. I'll cut contact with Katie." It was a mistake. But looking at him, I no longer saw the man I'd fallen in love with. I saw someone I couldn't trust, someone who had systematically chipped away at my independence while betraying me behind my back. "I need you to leave," I said quietly. "This is my apartment too," he countered. "Then I'll go." I stood up, heading toward the bedroom to pack a bag. "Amber, don't be dramatic. Where will you even go?" I didn't answer. I pulled out my phone and texted Jessica, "Can I stay with you for a few days?" Her response was immediate, already making up the guest room. As I packed essentials into a duffel bag, the pain I'd been holding at bay crashed over me in waves. 3 years of my life. Countless memories now tainted. Trust shattered. The future I'd imagined, gone. I allowed myself exactly 5 minutes to cry, sitting on the edge of the bed where we'd slept side by side for 2 years. Then I wiped my eyes, zipped the bag, and walked out to face whatever came next. Jessica opened her door before I could even knock, enveloping me in a hug that finally broke the tenuous control I'd maintained over my emotions. I sobbed into her shoulder in the hallway of her apartment building, 3 years of love and betrayal pouring out at once. "I've got you," she whispered, guiding me inside and closing the door behind us. "Let it all out." After I'd cried myself into exhaustion, Jessica made tea and sat across from me at her kitchen table. The early evening light cast long shadows across her apartment as I recounted everything, the controlling behavior that had increased so gradually, the double standards, the discovery of Katie, and Ryan's pathetic confession. "I can't believe I didn't see what was happening," I concluded, staring into my mug. "I feel so stupid." "You're not stupid," Jessica insisted firmly. "He was manipulating you, Amber. Making you doubt yourself while he did exactly what he accused you of doing. I gave up so much for him. Friends, hobbies, parts of myself." The realization made fresh tears well up. "I knew something was wrong," Jessica admitted. "You stopped painting, you always had an excuse for why you couldn't meet up. But I didn't want to push too hard and drive you away completely. I should have listened when you tried to warn me." "This isn't your fault," she said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "Controlling people don't start with the big stuff. They chip away slowly until your normal meter is completely broken." My phone buzzed repeatedly throughout the evening, texts and calls from Ryan alternating between apologies, explanations, and subtle blame. "Ryan, I'm so sorry. Please come home so we can talk." "Ryan, you're overreacting. It was just a mistake." "Ryan, if you hadn't been so cold lately, this wouldn't have happened." "Ryan, I love you. No one understands me like you do." After the 20th message, Jessica gently took my phone. "You don't need to read these right now. They'll still be there tomorrow." That night was one of the darkest I've ever experienced. I lay awake in Jessica's guest room, replaying every moment of the past year, seeing the red flags I'd dismissed or rationalized away. The controlling behavior disguised as concern. The criticism masked as helpful suggestions. The isolation that happened so gradually I hardly noticed. Around 3 a.m., Jessica knocked softly on the door. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, poking her head in. I sat up, wiping fresh tears. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face when he admitted it. She sat on the edge of the bed. "I remember when my ex-fiancé cheated. I thought the pain would kill me." "How did you get through it?" "1 hour at a time, at first. Then 1 day at a time." She handed me a tissue. "And I stopped blaming myself for not seeing who he really was. I feel like I don't even know who I am anymore," I confessed. "I've spent so long trying to be what Ryan wanted that I lost myself somewhere along the way." "The Amber I know is still in there," Jessica assured me. The strong, creative woman who took a chance moving to a new city for her dream job. Who helped me through my mom's cancer scare last year. Who used to paint those incredible abstract landscapes. I'd almost forgotten about those paintings. Ryan had called them messy and suggested I focus on more marketable design work. Eventually, I'd packed my supplies away. We talked until dawn, Jessica sharing her own experience with a controlling relationship in college, me gradually piecing together the timeline of Ryan's manipulation. As morning light filtered through the blinds, exhaustion finally pulled me toward sleep. When I woke late the next morning, I felt different. The pain remained, a constant ache in my chest, but alongside it was something new, a sense of clarity and purpose. I found Jessica in the kitchen, already dressed for her job at the hospital administration office. I called in sick for you, she said, sliding a mug of coffee across the counter. Told them you had a nasty stomach bug. Thank you, I said, realizing I hadn't even thought about work. For everything. What do you want to do now? She asked. I need to get more of my things from the apartment, I replied. And figure out what comes next. I already called Megan, Jessica said, referring to our mutual friend who practiced family law. She's emailing you some resources about tenant rights since both your names are on the lease. After Jessica left for work, I opened my laptop and began researching. I started with articles about emotional manipulation and gaslighting, the clinical term for making someone question their own reality. Every resource I found described Ryan's behavior with eerie accuracy. One article led to another, and I found myself taking notes, documenting patterns I hadn't fully recognized until seeing them described by experts. The isolation from friends and family. The double standards. The subtle digs that undermined my confidence. The jealous accusations that, in hindsight, were clearly projection of his own infidelity. By afternoon, I had pages of notes and a clearer understanding of what I'd experienced. I also had something I hadn't felt in months, anger. Not the reactive flash of anger from our argument, but a deep, righteous indignation that powered my next steps. I created a new email account Ryan couldn't access and forwarded important documents there. I made a list of shared accounts and passwords I needed to change. I reviewed our lease agreement, which thankfully had a clause allowing either party to remove themselves with 30 days' notice. I also took screenshots of Katie's social media posts that contradicted Ryan's stories about where he'd been, storing them in a secured folder. Not because I needed proof, I knew the truth now, but because I didn't trust Ryan not to try rewriting history. When Jessica returned from work, she found me surrounded by notes and printouts. You've been busy, she observed, setting down her bag. I needed to understand what happened, I explained. And plan what happens next. And, she prompted, sitting beside me. I'm going back to the apartment tomorrow to confront him, I said. Not to reconcile, but to establish boundaries and start the separation process. I'll need a friend to come with me. Say no more, Jessica replied. What time? That evening, as we ordered takeout and finalized our approach, Ryan's texts continued. Ryan, please just talk to me. I'm falling apart here. Ryan, I made a mistake, but that doesn't erase what we have. Ryan, at least tell me where you're staying. I didn't respond to any of them. For the first time since our relationship began its downward spiral, I felt in control of my own decisions. The pain hadn't disappeared, I still loved the person I thought Ryan was, but I was beginning to separate that image from the reality of who he had revealed himself to be. Before going to bed, I found myself opening the Notes app on my phone and writing. I deserve respect. I deserve honesty. I deserve trust. I deserve freedom. I deserve equality in my relationship. I stared at the words for a long time, realizing how basic these expectations were, yet how completely they had been violated. Tomorrow would be difficult, but with this clarity and Jessica's support, I was ready to face Ryan and begin reclaiming my life. The next morning, Jessica and I arrived at the apartment at precisely 10 a.m., when I knew Ryan would be home but before he would leave for his regular Tuesday client meeting. I took a deep breath before using my key, Jessica's reassuring presence behind me giving me strength. Ryan was at the kitchen table with his laptop, looking disheveled and tired. His expression cycled rapidly from surprise to relief to wariness when he spotted Jessica. You brought backup? He asked, his tone attempting lightness but landing on bitter. I brought support, I corrected. We need to talk, and I'd like Jessica to stay. This should be between us, he countered, standing. Private relationship issues shouldn't have an audience. That privacy approach hasn't worked well for us so far, I replied evenly. Jessica stays. Something in my tone must have conveyed my resolve, because Ryan reluctantly nodded, gesturing toward the living room. I remained standing, maintaining physical distance between us. I've had time to think about our relationship, I began, my prepared statements clear in my mind. About the patterns we've established and where we go from here. I've been thinking too, Ryan interrupted. I made a terrible mistake with Katie. It meant nothing, and I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust. Couples counseling, open phone policy, whatever you need. I noticed he'd shaved and put on the blue shirt I'd once mentioned was my favorite. His contrition seemed genuine, and for a moment I felt the pull of our history, the comfort of the familiar despite its toxicity. The issue isn't just Katie, I said, refocusing. It's the months of controlling behavior. The double standards. The isolation from my friends. The criticism that made me second-guess myself. Ryan's expression hardened slightly. I think you're rewriting history a bit. I've always supported your career, your interests. Really? I pulled out my phone and opened the document I'd prepared. Last September, you said my painting was just a hobby and suggested I focus on real work instead. In November, you questioned why I needed to attend Taylor's wedding without you. In January, you accidentally deleted the contact information for that freelance opportunity in Seattle. With each example, Ryan's posture became more defensive. You're making me sound like some kind of monster. Relationships involve compromise, Amber. Maybe I was protective sometimes, but that's because I cared. Control isn't protection, I stated firmly. And it's not love. So that's it? 3 years thrown away over some misunderstandings and one mistake? It wasn't just one mistake, Ryan. I moved to my laptop on the coffee table and opened the folder of screenshots I'd compiled. Here's you at the rooftop bar when you told me you were working late. Here's Katie's post about your dinner date at Carmelo's when you said you were with a client and his wife. Ryan's face flushed. You've been stalking her social media? That's desperate, Amber. Jessica, who had remained silently supportive, raised an eyebrow at his deflection tactic but didn't speak. I've been finding the truth, I corrected him. And the truth is that you created different rules for yourself than for me. You monitored my friendships while building a relationship with someone else. You accused me of exactly what you were doing. Ryan paced the living room, running his hands through his hair. Fine. I messed up. Badly. But people make mistakes, Amber. 3 years together has to count for something. We can start fresh, rebuild. I don't want to rebuild something that was fundamentally unequal, I interrupted. I've done a lot of research in the past 2 days about healthy relationships versus controlling ones. About emotional manipulation and gaslighting. Everything I've read describes what we've been doing. So now I'm abusive because of one affair? Ryan's voice rose indignantly. That's a pretty serious accusation. I didn't use that word, I replied calmly. But the patterns were unhealthy, and I couldn't see it clearly until now. I outlined my plan. I would move out permanently, arranging for movers to collect my larger belongings later in the week. I would pay my share of the rent until the lease ended in 3 months or until Ryan found a new roommate. We would disentangle our shared accounts and belongings as civilly as possible. As I spoke, Ryan's expression shifted from defensive to calculating. This is really what you want, he asked when I finished. To throw away everything we'd built over one indiscretion? To give up on us completely? It wasn't just one indiscretion, I repeated. It was a pattern of behavior that wasn't healthy for either of us. I can't believe you're being this cold, he said, his voice softening as he stepped toward me. The Amber I know wouldn't give up so easily. The Amber I fell in love with believed in second chances. I recognized the tactic immediately, the appeal to my better nature, the subtle suggestion that standing up for myself was somehow a character flaw rather than an act of self-respect. The Amber you fell in love with has been disappearing piece by piece as she tried to accommodate your jealousy and control, I responded. I want to find her again. Ryan's gentle approach vanished, replaced by cold anger. Fine. If that's how you want to play this. But don't come crawling back when you realize what you've thrown away. He grabbed his keys from the counter. You want to be single so badly? Enjoy it. But don't expect me to wait around while you have your little independence moment. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. 6 months ago, it might have worked. The threat of losing him completely might have sent me backpedaling, apologizing, compromising. But now I saw it for what it was, a last attempt to regain control. "I don't expect you to wait," I said simply. "I expect you to respect my decision. You know what your problem is, Amber? You've always been selfish. Always thinking about your needs, your career, your feelings. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? By believing some Instagram posts over the man who wanted to marry you someday?" The accusation of selfishness nearly made me laugh despite the tension. How many times had I rearranged my schedule to accommodate his? How often had I swallowed my discomfort to keep the peace? If prioritizing my self-respect makes me selfish, then yes, I'm being selfish, I agreed. And I should have been sooner. Ryan looked between Jessica and me, realizing his tactics weren't working. His jaw tightened. "You'll regret this," he said finally. "When the novelty of being independent wears off and you're alone, you'll remember what we had." "What we had wasn't what I thought it was," I replied. "But I appreciate the clarity I have now." With a final disgusted look, Ryan grabbed his jacket and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The apartment seemed to exhale in his absence, the tension dissipating like smoke. Jessica moved to my side. "You okay?" I nodded, surprised to find I actually was. "Better than I expected." "You were amazing," she said. "Clear, direct, no drama. He tried every manipulation tactic in the book, and you didn't budge." I rehearsed what I wanted to say, I admitted. But I wasn't prepared for how relieved I'd feel afterward. We spent the next hour gathering more of my essential belongings, focusing on irreplaceable items and documents in case Ryan returned in a vindictive mood. As we were about to leave, I paused in the doorway, looking back at the space that had been my home for 2 years. "You know what's strange?" I said to Jessica. "Part of me still loves the person I thought he was. But that person doesn't exist." "That's the hardest part of breakups like this," she replied. "Mourning someone who was partly a projection all along." I locked the door behind us, symbolically closing this chapter of my life. The confrontation had gone nothing like the dramatic scene I'd feared, with tears and recriminations. Instead, it had been clarifying, confirming that the decision I'd made was the right one, not just for now but for my future. As we reached Jessica's car, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Ryan, this isn't over. You're making a huge mistake." I showed Jessica, who raised her eyebrows. "Want to bet how long before he switches back to the apology approach?" "It doesn't matter," I replied, putting my phone away without responding. I'm not playing the game anymore. For the first time in months, perhaps even years, I felt truly in control of my own story. The road ahead would be difficult, finding a new place to live, rebuilding friendships I'd neglected, rediscovering parts of myself I'd set aside, but it was my road to travel, my choices to make. I glanced at my reflection in the car window and saw someone I recognized from long ago, a woman with clear eyes and a determined set to her jaw. A woman who knew her worth and wouldn't settle for less than she deserved. She had been there all along, waiting for me to find her again. The first week after leaving Ryan was a blur of logistics and emotion. I stayed in Jessica's guest room while hunting for an affordable studio apartment, which proved challenging in the city's competitive rental market. Ryan alternated between angry texts and pleading ones, each swing of his mood confirming I'd made the right decision. "He sent flowers to my office today," I told Jessica one evening as we sorted through the belongings I'd brought from the apartment. "The card said I'll always fight for us." "Classic love bombing," Jessica remarked. "First comes anger, then comes desperate attempts to win you back." She was right. When the flowers didn't produce the desired effect, Ryan escalated to leaving tearful voicemails and even contacting my parents, positioning himself as the heartbroken partner blindsided by my sudden departure. "Mom called asking what happened," I said during a lunch break with Taylor, who had become a steady support alongside Jessica. "Apparently Ryan told her I was going through something and he was really worried about me." Controlling the narrative, Taylor observed. Making you look unstable while he's the concerned boyfriend. After explaining the reality to my parents, including screenshots of Katie's social media posts, they understood. My father, never Ryan's biggest fan despite their baseball conversations, simply said, "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself, Amber." 2 weeks after the confrontation, with the help of Jessica, Taylor, and a colleague who knew a property manager, I found a small studio apartment in an older building across town. It needed updating but had character, exposed brick walls, large windows, and most importantly, it was mine alone. Moving day arrived, and friends I hadn't seen in months appeared to help. Mark, whose housewarming party had introduced me to Ryan, brought his truck and recruited 2 more friends to help with furniture. My coworker Zoe, whom Ryan had once called a bad influence because she was happily single at 35, organized the kitchen setup. Even my old college roommate Danielle drove 2 hours to help, bringing housewarming gifts and hugs. "I've missed you," Danielle said as we assembled a new bookshelf. "You kind of disappeared the past year." "I'm sorry," I replied, feeling the weight of the friendships I'd neglected. I didn't realize how isolated I'd become. "No apologies needed," she insisted. "You're back now. That's what matters." The apartment came together over the weekend, not perfectly decorated or fully unpacked, but functional and, most importantly, mine. Sunday evening, after everyone had left, I stood in the middle of the small living space and breathed deeply. The silence wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. I could play whatever music I wanted, stay up late painting, leave dishes in the sink if I chose, small freedoms that suddenly felt enormously significant. Ryan's attempts to reconcile continued through those first weeks. He showed up at my office unannounced one afternoon, causing such a scene that security had to escort him out. He happened to appear at the coffee shop near Jessica's apartment where I'd been staying. Each encounter reinforced my decision to leave. The most unexpected development came about 6 weeks after our separation. I was grocery shopping when I literally bumped carts with a blonde woman who looked vaguely familiar. "Sorry," I apologized automatically, then recognized her. "Katie?" Her expression shifted from confusion to recognition to embarrassment in rapid succession. "You're Amber." An awkward silence stretched between us in the produce section. "This is unexpected," I finally said. "Look, I should explain," she began. "You don't owe me an explanation," I interrupted. "Ryan and I are over." "That's just it," she replied, looking uncomfortable. "He told me you two broke up months ago. That you were his ex who couldn't move on." The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, but it still stung. "We were together until 6 weeks ago. Living together, planning a future." Katie's face paled. "He said you'd been separated since January, just sharing the apartment for financial reasons until the lease ended. That you were possessive and checked his phone, which is why he had to be careful about texts." I laughed despite myself. "He told me almost the exact same thing about his crazy ex when we first met 3 years ago. I'm seeing a pattern now." We moved to the coffee shop next door, where Katie shared her side of the story. Ryan had portrayed himself as essentially single, claiming I was emotionally unstable and clingy. He'd told her we rarely saw each other despite living in the same apartment, painting a picture of a relationship that was over in all but name. "I would never have gotten involved if I'd known," she insisted. "I'm not that person." "I believe you," I said, and I did. Ryan is very convincing when he rewrites reality. "I ended it last week," she confided. Things weren't adding up. He got furious when I mentioned something about his mother that contradicted a previous story. Called me paranoid, said I was ruining everything with my trust issues. It was like a switch flipped. "I know exactly what that's like," I told her. "The moment you question his version of events, you become the problem." We parted with an unusual sense of solidarity, 2 women who had glimpsed different sides of the same deception. That chance encounter provided unexpected closure. Ryan wasn't just unfaithful, he was systematically dishonest, creating parallel realities tailored to what each woman wanted to hear. As months passed, my new life took shape. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, accepting their welcome back without the guilt Ryan would have encouraged. I joined a weekly painting group, rediscovering the joy of creating art without criticism. My work improved as my confidence returned, earning me a promotion to senior designer. Most importantly, I learned to recognize red flags I'd previously ignored. When a charming client asked me to dinner 6 months after the breakup, I noticed how he spoke negatively about his crazy ex-girlfriends. When he mentioned that women couldn't be trusted with too much freedom, I politely ended the evening early. Jessica teased me about becoming too picky, but I disagreed. Not picky, I explained over brunch one Sunday. Just clear about what I won't accept anymore. Fair enough, she conceded. So what will you accept? What are you looking for now? The question made me pause. A year ago, I would have described someone like the old version of Ryan, charming, confident, ambitious. Now my priorities had shifted entirely. Mutual respect, I answered finally. Real equality. Someone who celebrates my independence instead of feeling threatened by it. Someone who builds me up instead of subtly tearing me down. And absolutely no double standards. Sounds like a solid foundation, Jessica approved. Around the 1-year mark after leaving Ryan, I reluctantly agreed to a blind date arranged by Taylor. Eric was a landscape architect who designed public parks and community gardens. He arrived with a small, thoughtful gift, a set of artist-quality watercolors he'd heard I might like through Taylor's description of my rediscovered painting hobby. No pressure to use them, he said with a genuine smile. Just thought they looked interesting. Throughout dinner, I found myself unconsciously testing him against my new standards. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He spoke about his ex-partner with respect, taking responsibility for his part in their incompatibility. When I mentioned an upcoming girls' weekend trip, he responded with genuine enthusiasm rather than suspicion. That sounds amazing, he said. My sister goes on an annual kayaking trip with her college friends. She always comes back energized. By dessert, I realized I'd relaxed completely, no monitoring my words, no anticipating criticism, no walking on eggshells. It was just easy. Not boring, but uncomplicated in the best possible way. After dinner, walking to our cars, Eric asked if I'd like to see an exhibition of environmental art that was opening the following weekend. I'd like that, I said, surprised by how much I meant it. Great, he replied, making no move to invade my personal space. I'll text you the details, and you can let me know if it still works for you. As I drove home, I reflected on the difference a year had made. I wasn't looking for someone to complete me or define me. I was already complete, already defined. Any relationship I entered now would be from a position of strength rather than need, of choice rather than fear. The most profound lesson from my experience with Ryan wasn't about him at all, it was about recognizing my own worth. About understanding that love shouldn't require shrinking yourself to fit someone else's expectations. That genuine partnership means growing together rather than one person diminishing to appease the other. I still occasionally thought about the woman I had been 3 years ago, so eager to please that she gradually surrendered pieces of herself to keep the peace. I wished I could tell her that real love doesn't demand such sacrifices. That respect isn't something you earn through compliance but something you deserve by existing. But perhaps she had to learn that lesson the hard way. Perhaps we all do. My new apartment now feels like home. My watercolor landscapes hang on the walls without criticism. Friends come and go freely, bringing laughter and support. I answer to no one when making plans, and the freedom that once seemed frightening now feels like breathing fresh air after years in a stuffy room. I'm not afraid of being alone anymore, because I've learned that truly being yourself is far less lonely than being half of who you are to please someone else. If you've ever experienced what I did, the slow erosion of your independence, the double standards, the manipulation that makes you question your own reality, know that there is life after leaving. Know that the voice telling you that you're overreacting is often the one most invested in your continued compliance. Have you ever experienced a relationship with double standards? How did you handle it? Share your stories in the comments below. And if you found strength or insight from my experience, please like and subscribe. Your support helps this channel reach others who might be going through similar situations. Remember, recognizing red flags isn't being too picky, it's protecting your right to be treated with respect and equality. Thank you for listening, and take care of yourself. You deserve nothing less.